All right, hey everyone, and welcome. Think of me as your guide on a pretty incredible architectural tour. But forget skyscrapers and bridges, we're going microscopic to explore the amazing, complex structures that build every single living thing on our planet. Our tour starts right now.
So let's kick things off with a really fundamental question. What's the one thing that a giant redwood tree, a microscopic bacterium, and you all have in common? What is that absolute most basic building block for all life as we know it? Well, the answer, of course, is the cell.
So here's the game plan for our tour today. We're going to start by comparing the two basic blueprints for life. Then, we'll take a tour of what I like to call the cellular city. We'll pop into its central library to check out the genetic master plan, see how plant and animal cells differ, and then we'll wrap up by just marveling at the tiny universe that's operating inside you right now. Okay, so first up on our tour. While all life is made of cells, it turns out not all cells are created equal. Nature basically uses two main blueprints, one that's pretty simple and straightforward, and another that's incredibly complex.
And really, the biggest, most fundamental difference between them boils down to one key feature: the nucleus. Over on the left, you've got the prokaryotic cell. It's the simple, minimalist design. Its DNA just kind of floats around inside. But on the right, you see the eukaryotic cell. This is the complex deluxe model. It keeps its precious genetic material safe and sound inside a secure vault called a nucleus.
Let's really dig into what makes them so different. If you look at the prokaryotic column, you'll see there's no nucleus, the cells themselves are way smaller, and they don't have all those complex internal parts we call organelles. Bacteria are a perfect example of this. Now, look over at the eukaryotic column. You've got that true nucleus, a much larger size, and a complex inside just packed with specialized organelles. These are the cells that make up plants, animals, and yep, us.
All right, now for the main event. Let's actually step inside one of these complex eukaryotic cells. And I want you to imagine it. Think of it like a bustling, living city, where every single building, or organelle, has a very specific and vital job to do.
Our first stop is the city's power grid, the mitochondria. Their whole job is to take the food the cell consumes and convert it into this universal energy currency called ATP. Literally every single thing the cell does, from building things to moving around to sending signals, is paid for with ATP. If the mitochondria shut down, the whole city goes dark.
And that is exactly why the mitochondrion has its famous nickname. You've probably heard it before. It's the powerhouse of the cell. It's the engine that keeps the entire city running.
Okay, so every city needs to build stuff, right? New buildings, repair crews, tools. Well, in the cell, that's the job of the ribosomes. These tiny, tiny particles are the construction workers of the cell, responsible for building proteins, which are the essential molecules that do just about everything. It's no surprise, then, that we call the ribosome the protein factory. It literally reads the genetic blueprints and assembles proteins piece by piece, just like a factory assembly line. Now, a lot of these factories aren't just floating around. They're located on this huge network, this highway system of membranes called the endoplasmic reticulum, or ER for short. And there are two different districts. On the left, you have the rough ER, which is covered in all those ribosome factories making proteins. And on the right, you have the smooth ER, which handles other jobs, like making lipids and detoxifying harmful substances.
So once those proteins and lipids are built, you can't just have them floating around aimlessly. They need to be sorted, tagged, and shipped to exactly the right place. That's the job of the Golgi apparatus. It's a stack of flattened sacks that basically acts as the city's central distribution center. And because of this vital sorting and shipping role, you've probably guessed its nickname. We call it the post office of the cell. The Golgi receives packages from the ER, makes some final adjustments, slaps on a shipping label, and sends them on their way, either to other parts of the cell or for export out of the city altogether. Every busy city produces waste, and our cellular city is no exception. It also needs a good security force. Well, the lysosome takes care of both. It's basically a little sack filled with powerful digestive enzymes. It breaks down old, worn-out organelles so they can be recycled, and it destroys any invading viruses or bacteria. It's the city's recycling center and its security force, all rolled into one.
It also has a pretty dramatic nickname, the suicide back. And you might wonder why. Well, if a cell gets really badly damaged or infected beyond repair, the lysosome can actually burst open on purpose. It releases its enzymes and safely dismantles the entire cell from the inside out, protecting all the neighboring cells. It is the ultimate self-destruct and cleanup crew.
Okay, so we've seen the power plants, the factories, the post office. Now let's go to City Hall, the command center. We're talking about the nucleus. This is where the master blueprint for the entire organism is kept, written in the incredible molecule we call DNA.
So think about it. For our city to grow, or to repair itself, it has to make new cells, right? But before it can do that, it has to make a perfect copy of the master blueprint. This is called DNA replication. That famous double helix unwinds, and each of the two strands acts as a perfect template. New matching strands are built alongside them, and the result is two absolutely identical copies of the city's master plan, each one ready for a brand new cell.
All right, we've got the basic layout of our cellular city down. Now let's compare two different models of that city, a plant cell versus an animal cell. Now they share a lot of the same organelles we've already talked about, but they also have some really key architectural differences, designed for two very different ways of life.
Okay, look at this table here. It lays it all out. You'll notice some major differences right away. Plants have a super rigid outer cell wall for support. Animal cells are soft. They don't have one. Plants have these amazing organelles called chloroplasts that make food from sunlight. Animals, well, we have to eat our food. And look at the vacuole. In plants, it's this one huge central water tank that gives the cell a fixed shape. Animal cells just have a few small ones, so their shape is more irregular.
So what does all this mean for the plant? How do these unique parts help it survive? Well, think about it. The chloroplasts are like tiny solar panels, making food out of thin air and sunlight. That huge central vacuole fills up with water like a water balloon, creating internal pressure that keeps the plant firm and upright. And that tough outer cell wall gives it the structural support it needs to grow tall and strong against gravity.
Okay, for the last stop on our tour, let's zoom all the way out. Let's bring this home and just appreciate the absolutely mind-boggling world of cells inside our own bodies.
I mean, just look at that number. 37 trillion. That's not millions or billions. It's trillions. That's roughly how many individual, living, working cellular cities are cooperating right now to make you. The scale is almost impossible to comprehend.
And these 37 trillion cells aren't all the same, not by a long shot. They are incredibly specialized. For instance, the largest single cell in the human body is the egg cell. Some of your nerve cells can be over a meter long, stretching all the way from your spine down to your toes. And get this, to make as much room as possible for oxygen, your mature red blood cells actually eject their nucleus. They throw out the entire command center.
And all of this brings us to one last, truly fascinating question. If a skin cell, a nerve cell, and a muscle cell, if they all have the exact same DNA master plan inside them, how in the world do they end up looking and acting so completely different from each other? Well, that's a story for another time. Thanks for joining me on this tour of the cell.